Today's book is a Sunshine State Young Reader Award book, or SSYRA, for 3rd through 5th grade from the year 2020-21 school year, and it's called Caterpillar Summer by Jillian McDunn. Part 1. End and Begin. You and me and you, will always be together. Caterpillar and Chicken, the Great Bubblegum Pancake. Chapter 1. Cat always kept her brother in the back of her mind, except for the times he was at the front of it. She might be multiplying fractions in her head while her brain quietly asked, "Did you cut the tag out of Chicken's shirt?" She might be studying plants of the tundra biome when her mind questioned whether his teacher was calling him Henry, which he hated. She might be scooping mashed potatoes on her tray when she wondered, will he be the only first grader left behind at the aquarium? On a good day, Chicken liked to wander. On a bad day, Chicken would bolt. But no matter what, Cat loved him as wide as the Golden Gate Bridge, as deep as the sea floor, and as fierce as a shark bite. The last day of 5th grade, Cat was on alert. Usually the last day of school was messy, noisy, and busy, the kind of day that could easily be too much for Chicken. When he got upset, he couldn't always calm himself. He got more and more tangled up until he overflowed and every feeling came rushing out. Mom called it a meltdown, but to Cat, it was tight and sharp. It was the opposite of melting. When the dismissal bell rang, Cat slid her backpack to her shoulder and hustled double time to the steps of the entrance. The sky above her was gray and low, but inside, Cat felt like sunshine. She bounced on the balls of her feet. The bounces said, "Summer, Atlanta, and my best friend Rishi." If her heart had its way, it would have skittered out of her chest and started vacation without her. The next day, they'd fly east until they reached Atlanta. Mom would teach a 3-week college class, and Cat and Chicken would tag along to see the Krishnamurthis, who moved to Georgia last summer. It had been a year, but Cat still missed going to Rishi's house to play, do homework, and eat dosas. But even from thousands of miles away, he was still her best friend. Plus, Mom promised they would have a real vacation when she wasn't teaching. It would be the first Cat could remember since it was just the 3 of them. A stream of kids poured onto the sidewalk, and Cat sidestepped the elbowing boys and twirling kindergartners. "Hey, Cat!" said a voice behind her. Cat turned, expecting to see her brother, but instead, it was Poppy Zhang, the nicest girl in 5th grade. Her cheeks dimpled when she smiled, and at that moment she was dimpling at Cat. "You crushed that geometry review," said Poppy. Math was Cat's favorite, and geometry was her best. Cat liked geometry's rules. They made her feel organized. "Thanks," said Cat. "You too." Poppy laughed. "I'm not so sure, but thanks." She tilted her head toward a cluster of girls on the sidewalk. "A few of us are going to Toy Boat. Do you want to come?" Of course Cat wanted to go. She could almost taste the mint chocolate chip, but then she thought of her brother. I know you watch Chicken after school," Poppy said. "You could bring him." It would never work. He'd wiggle right off his seat. He'd drip ice cream on the table. He'd drip ice cream onto Poppy Zhang. Cat shook her head slowly. "I can't." Poppy looked disappointed, but offered Cat a smile. "See you around." She hurried to catch up with the others. Most days Cat didn't mind watching Chicken. It wasn't his fault that he needed her in the afternoon. It wasn't Mom's fault she had to work all the time. It wasn't the Krishnamurthy's fault. They moved to Georgia for a new job for Rishi's mom. It wasn't anyone's fault, but Kat's insides didn't feel like sunshine anymore. Caterpillar! She turned halfway before getting caught between a squeeze and a crash. Hey, chicken! She patted his back until he let go. She leaned back to see him. He was the kind of kid who wore his day on his face. When his brown eyes crinkled in a good day grin, she couldn't help but grin back. Silently, he held out a clenched fist. For you, Caterpillar. Kat stretched out her hand to receive the daily treasure. The dandelion was wilted, but she turned it gently, like it was made of gold. It's beautiful. She tucked the flower in her pocket and studied his face. Good day? Chicken shrugged. Kat raised her eyebrows. The last day of school was chaotic, and Chicken didn't like being off schedule. Are you sure? No hard times? He frowned slightly, looking back at her. It was loud when we cleaned our desks, but I did belly breaths until I felt calm. He inhaled deeply, rounding his stomach, then pushed the air out in a burst. Good job using strategies. She looked him over. Traces of frosting crusted his chin, and gray paint streaked his sweatshirt, but overall he looked good. Cleaning a mess was easier than fixing a bad mood. Down the steps he galloped, art projects and worksheets flying from his backpack like a paper tornado. Kat sighed. Even if he'd managed the school day, he still needed her for some things. Hold on, she called after him, gathering his papers. You didn't zip up. Chicken spun, whirling more papers across the steps. All my work from the year, he announced. This is schoolwork? Kat asked. More like an explosion in a paper factory. She returned the pages to his backpack. And sharks? Don't have swim bladders? Chicken's voice squeaked with excitement, adding question marks that shouldn't be there. Sharks were Chicken's favorite, a surprising choice for a boy who was sweet as marshmallows. Chicken was still talking. But sharks have oil in their liver, which makes them float? Listening to Chicken talk about sharks made Kat think about a specific shark, a shark they needed every night at bedtime. She rummaged in his backpack, reaching past crumpled papers until her fingers found the edges of a plastic fin. Whew! She zipped the backpack. All set. Chicken stopped his shark chatter and turned to her. Since I had a good day and used my strategies, can we celebrate? What kind of celebration? She thought of Poppy Zang. Ice cream at Toy Boat? Before she could finish, Chicken was already shaking his head. I hate that place. Too many eyes watching me. Toy Boat shelves were crowded with vintage action figures and other old toys. Chicken didn't like all the faces. They're just toys, Chicken. Chicken stuck out his chin. I want Chinese buns. He loved the sesame-crusted buns with sweet bean paste nestled inside. Where's Mama working today? Chicken asked. Mom wrote books, taught illustration to college students, and picked up shifts at the Russian bakery. She always said 3 jobs plus 2 kids equaled 1 busy life, even though she never mentioned Daddy's medical bills. Kat knew they were part of the equation, too. She's at home working on her book, said Kat. Please, can we go? Chicken's eyes were open so wide his lashes curled to his brows. I promise to stay out of the way when you pack. Deal, said Kat. Together they walked downhill toward Clement Street. Kat gripped Chicken's hand when they crossed the streets. Always in the back of her mind, she was afraid of losing him. It had happened a few times this year, more than Kat wanted to admit. Once he left the playground swings for the turtle pond. At the aquarium, he ditched the tide pools for the brown-banded bamboo shark. At the grocery store, he fled the spaghetti aisle for the popsicle freezer. He was impulsive enough to be dangerous, and fast enough to travel far before anyone noticed he was gone. Chicken tightrope walked the curb alongside parked cars. "Guess what I did at school today?" This was the game they played every day. It was what she used to play with Daddy. Kat said, pulling her jacket around her. "Did your class have a snowball fight?" "No," Chicken exclaimed, giggling. "San Francisco has fog, not snow." Kat wanted to think of something even more ridiculous so she could hear that laugh again. "Did you go skydiving?" Chicken chuckled. "No way! Guess again." They reached Geary and Chicken jabbed the crosswalk button. "Hold my hand," Kat said. Chicken punched the button again. "We're not crossing yet." Kat narrowed her eyes. "This is a big street and super busy, so hold it, okay?" It was a warning, not a question. Chicken frowned, but held out his hand. Kat squeezed. The light turned, and they hustled across. "You have one more try," Chicken reminded her. They were back on the sidewalk, but he hadn't let go. She looked at their clasped hands. Kat's skin was in between Daddy's dark skin and Mom's pale skin. Chicken's skin was a little darker, more like Daddy's. "One more try? I'd better make it a good one." Kat scrunched her face. The gray paint on his sweatshirt and pages of artwork floated into her head. She opened her eyes. "I think you painted some sharks." Chicken's eyes and mouth formed perfect O's. "How did you know?" "Lucky guess." He looked at her like she was a genius. She bumped him lightly with her hip. Clement Street was known as San Francisco's other Chinatown. It wasn't much of a tourist destination, but it still bustled with shoppers and traffic. Chicken pushed open the bakery door, releasing a blast of warm, sweet air. Chicken jumped from square to square across the checkered linoleum floor. Kat knew he was playing the hot lava game. Kat ordered and paid, then handed Chicken the crinkly bakery bag with 3 sesame buns inside. Her pineapple bun was in its own bag, which she held carefully as they walked back outside to the cool afternoon. Together they stood on the sidewalk and gazed at the wedding cake in the window. Clement Street was familiar to them, but there were always new things to see. They wandered past the Burmese restaurant, the furniture store, and the bar where Irish music played at night. Chicken's favorite place on Clement was the fish market. He didn't like the smell, so he pinched his nose shut as they stood on the sidewalk and viewed the murky tanks. Kat was thinking about the last day of 5th grade, which meant the first day of 6th grade was less than 3 months away. Chicken would be in 2nd grade, but for the first time they'd be in different schools. This worried Kat. Her brother struggled more than most kids. Sometimes he needed the music turned down. Another time he might need a sock seam straightened. Kat was the best at helping him, but how could she be there for him when her middle school was 6 blocks away? A single lobster scrabbled in its tank, its claws banded in blue. Below, a tank of crabs brawled. A fat crab climbed across the others like it was their king. She reached over to nudge Chicken, but her elbow met empty space. She turned. No 7-year-old boy with brown skin and curly hair. No gray backpack. No yellow striped shirt. She looked up the block, then whirled the other way. Her stomach twisted. He was gone. "Chicken?" she called. A guy with rings in his ears strolled by, carrying a paper cup of coffee. He looked up from his phone to nod at the market window. "No chicken. Plenty of fish." He laughed to himself and kept walking. Not helpful. She scowled as he passed. In the produce market, short bananas dangled above glossy eggplant and bumpy avocados. Pale cabbages were stacked in mountains. Dried roots looked like interplanetary visitors, but there was no chicken. To find her brother, she had to think like him. She headed down the street. Chicken loved the pizzeria. That gave them balls of fresh dough to play with, but their doors were locked until dinner time. The pharmacy was small, and it took one peek to see he wasn't in there. Back toward the fish market she dodged shoppers and weaved through a group of people with piercings. A woman pulling a metal shopping cart talked loudly in Mandarin. A bus stopped, and a wave of people crushed onto the sidewalk. Kat circled back to the fish market, glancing at the shimmering fish. She felt underwater, too. She couldn't breathe the air. A delivery truck roared by, rumbling her insides. "Chicken!" she yelled. There was no answer. When the bus pulled away from the curb, something across the street caught her eye. Outside the bookstore, a statue of a gnome-like clown guarded the bargain books with a wide smirk. Chicken had loved it since he was a baby. He called it the book elf. She looked both ways, then ran across. There was no sign of him. She burst into the bookstore. A pink-haired woman was behind the counter. "Have you seen my brother?" Kat asked. The woman looked up. "Who's your brother?" "He looks like me, but this high." Kat held up her hand to a spot on her ribs. "Short hair, gray backpack." The woman shrugged. "I haven't seen any kids." Kat was back outside in a flash. The woman called to her, but Kat kept going. No one could help her now. Her heart raced. The world swirled green and gray as tears popped in her eyes. She wiped them away. Crying wouldn't help. And then she saw them. On the other side of the statue, from under one of the bargain tables, there were two blue sneakers, small ones, attached to skinny legs. She walked over and squatted down. "Chicken!" When he looked at her face, his face broke open in a smile. In one hand was a sesame bun with some bites chomped out of it. In the other was a book. "I found one of Mama's." He held it up. The familiar caterpillar and chicken on the cover, by Amanda Gladwell. Kat leaned her forehead against the table. Her heart hadn't lowered itself from where it sat sideways in her throat. "Chicken, why are you under here?" "I was done with the fish," he explained patiently. "I went to see the book elf." Kat crawled under the table, pressing against him. She leaned against the wall of the bookstore and breathed in the smell of poster paint, no-tear shampoo, and bean paste. 6 sesame seeds stuck to his chin. Tears popped in her eyes again for no good reason. She picked at one of the seeds, but it was stuck tight. "You know you can't run away." Chicken squirmed from her fingers. "I didn't run. I walked." "Oh, no," she snapped. "He wouldn't get away with that. You know what I mean. You have to stop disappearing. You could have been smashed by a car, or you could have been taken." Chicken blinked slowly. He tilted his head to the side. "But I didn't get smashed or taken. I'm right here." "Don't do it again," Kat said sharply. Then, more softly, "Don't run off. You scared me." They pulled in their feet and watched a crowd of legs walk past. She looped her hand through Chicken's backpack, and while he turned the pages of their mother's book, the wall was cool on her back. The book made her brother giggle. As he read, he pointed at Chicken's antics and Caterpillar's expressions. This was what happened to the real-life things Cat and Chicken did. Mom turned them into a story, a Caterpillar and Chicken book that kids couldn't get enough of. In books, their problems were solved in a clever 32 pages. Real life was more complicated. Mom counted on Cat to watch Chicken. But if Mom knew about Chicken running off, she might not let Cat watch him any more. Then the stack of hospital bills would never get smaller. If Mom knew Chicken was disappearing, she would fall apart. Cat and Chicken were all Mom had. Chicken traced the patterned end papers with his small fingers. "Cat?" She squeezed his shoulder. Yes? He nodded at her hand. Are you going to eat that? The pineapple bun. She handed it to him. He took a bite and made a silly face, crossing his eyes. They laughed, huddled under the table like it was their secret cave. But even then, Kat held his shoulder. She had to keep him safe. Chapter 2, Caterpillar Summer. We are going to stop right here. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 1 of Caterpillar Summer. If you like this book and would like to read more of it, you can check it out on Destiny or an ebook or audiobook on SSYRA or Learning Ally.